Hello again, friends, and you are my friends, and welcome back to the second of your twice weekly championship half-an-hour show with myself and Joe. As the intro just told you, I hope we are all well. I hope we are all safe and snug on this blustery Sunday morning. It's been a terrible weekend for weather, but we're here to make it a little bit better and bring a ray of sunshine. We've got Ben Moore. Hi, lads. Hope you both well. And Nick Muller. How did I do? Spoilers, Nick. It's coming up, my man. It's coming up. But first of all, let's welcome in my co-host and friend, Mr. Joe Lethal Lever.
Not feeling particularly lethal today. But yeah, good morning all. Thanks for tuning in. I've got a little bit of the sniffles this morning. Nothing major or anything, but I think I got soaked on my bike the other day. And I've been around my girlfriend since, and I think I've just been really sniffly since everything's dropped. But I'm good. I'm not looking forward to the Predictor League. Nick, I think, has definitely more reason to be looking forward to it.
Oh, he does.
And there's some other results to be confirmed. I think there was a couple of good. We'll get into it in a sec, but some really good results and some awful results for some teams yesterday.
Was. Good morning, S. Good morning. Predictor League coming up. I think you should be watching that one. Because I do the graphics, so I do know, really. I just don't want to spoil it too much for people, but it's a very exciting time getting the points coming through every Saturday night, and I get to do the graphic. It's very exciting. As always, guys, for those watching, you can get involved in the chat, as Nick, as Ben, as S has done, and of course, you can come on the show if you should want to. If you should have just a point about a championship team, maybe VAR in the Premier League, I will stretch it a little bit this week, just because it has been a little bit suspect. And come on. But we are joined this week by another man, another myth, another legend. Good morning, Mr. Drizzle.
Morning. Good morning. Can you hear me right?
We can. Loud and clear. You're coming through on my speakers. How are you doing?
Morning, chaps. Yes, all good. All good. On the coffee. So
likewise. So Joe's in the middle. He's got the sniffles. Rob's got the coffee, and I've also got the coffee. But it's a bit like, when your two previous partners meet each other for the first time. It's like no comparing notes, gentlemen. No comparing notes, please.
Who's to say we haven't met up prior beforehand?
Yeah, maybe we're comparing notes on you, mate. His time and my time.
Saucy. A big weekend of championship football has come and has gone again, as we can see on the screen now for those at home. So some fairly interesting results. We have got a 2 up, 2 down coming your way from each of us, and we'll run through that very soon. But some interesting results there, guys. Millwall 1, Brentford 1, Preston North End losing at home to Stoke. Obviously a man down, I believe Preston were. Cardiff losing at home to Reading. Who wants to kick us off with their 2 up this week? Who wants to go straight out of the bat? Joe, do you want to lead us off with your 2 up?
Well, yeah, the reason I'll start with one of my 2 ups, because we'll do it chronologically. One of my ups was actually from Friday night. Obviously, Saturday's games were on there, but forget that Huddersfield won 1-0 against Nottingham Forest on Friday night. And I think it kind of went under the radar with yesterday's action being quite wild with some of the scorelines. But I remember we on Thursday night sort of billed this game as the game where Nottingham Forest, literally had to get their season up and running. Now, I don't want to talk, too silly early on after 2 games, but I think they had mustered 1 shot on target in those 2 games, and a team tipped by many to be getting out of this league, or at least in the playoffs with the sort of money they've thrown at it and the manager. And to go to a Huddersfield side, which in themselves had kind of been struggling, off to a bit of a slow start. I think they lost 1-0 to Norwich, and there's no
called
shame.
them a mess last week.
I didn't. You keep saying that I called them a mess, but their fans were calling their situation a mess. As I said, it was Wickham I called was a direct mess. No, Huddersfield fans are calling their situation a mess. I watched one of their pods, and their fans don't even know what's really going on down there. But no, to lose 1-0 to Norwich in the grand scheme of things isn't that bad, but they were completely outplayed. Then they lost 3-0 to Brentford, and again conceded, 3 decent goals to a side that should be getting out of the league. But to play their Nottingham Forest, and you haven't scored a goal, to get a 1-0 win, I think is absolutely fantastic for them. And then that would be a really good result. And that's the sort of result that could kickstart Huddersfield season, It could really, really get them going, or at least, for their standard, and get them up the league rather than perhaps a struggling year. But I thought that was a really important win. And that Lamucci, we know what Nottingham Forest are like, and manages in the Championship. I think he must be walking a slight tightrope at the moment, because I think that's 3 defeats in a row. It's
four including
cup. Oh,
Yeah, no, I think you kicked it off there. I'll bring Rob in. Joe kicked it off there by saying it doesn't want to go too hard too early, 3 games in. But Forest fans and Forest as a club, I mean, he yesterday himself, Lemachi, in the interview, he said, "I feel the pressure. I can't say no." There is serious pressure building on him at Forest, isn't there, already?
I heard him say that he doesn't know how long he's got to turn it around, which is obviously that says to me that he's feeling the pressure. But I think, if you remember, you don't want to. I'm not really one for believing in like hangovers from last season, but the way they threw their way the playoffs, I mean, I think they needed to not concede 3 goals in the last 20 minutes at home. I mean, that's how bad their end to the season was and how they missed out on the playoffs last season. And they haven't really recovered, have they? I think, as you rightly said, they lost 3 in the league. I think they lost at Barnsley in the cup as well. So I think actually it might even be, if you go to the end of last season, it might even be something like, don't quote me on this, but it might even be something like 5-6 defeats in a row. In the league. So yeah, I think the pressure's on him, as Joe rightly said. Forest is one of those clubs like a Birmingham and such like, where they don't think twice about firing anyone. And yeah, they did gamble a bit last season, and you would say that they'd be in your top 6, maybe top 8. So they've been the top bunch looking for promotion. Obviously, they're well overdue a promotion. Big club for that league. Not the only one underachieving in big club, but I think ultimately he won't have long to turn it around. I would give it a month. I was just thinking, they're definitely, obviously, as you know, they're on my down. But
yeah, and we'll come to that very shortly.
My surprise was that they weren't on anybody else's down, to be honest with you.
Well, this is it. But they have been in previous weeks. I think I had them last week. It varies from week to week. We don't try and hammer too many times. But Joe, you've got Stoke on there. So before we jump to your downs, why Stoke out of all those teams?
Because everyone's been writing them off. And I think that if we go and look at the Predictor League, I think this was one of the games, including myself, I put them down for a draw. So I didn't even back them for the win. But no one expected anything of Stoke. I think they're not very fashionable. Not many people tip them. And to go to Preston North End, who I think, got a really good point at Carrow Road, and some say we were unlucky to come away with more with the balance of the game, although it was pretty even. Well, by default, obviously. But no, I think for how Stoke have been written off, to go to Preston, just give it a bit of perspective. They were down to 10 men after 22 minutes. But nonetheless, I think, as you guys know, Alex Neil sets up a side really well. And if there was a manager I was facing playing a team with 10 men, Alex Neil wouldn't be the sort of guy, because he marshals his team really well. So that would have still been a really hard fixture for Stoke to get something from. And it was an even game. Of course, they went on to dominate possession after the sending off. But I think to come away with a clean sheet and a 1-0 and 4 points from a possible 9 isn't actually too bad in the grand scheme of things, considering, who they've played and that. I think obviously they've played Bristol City. So I think to get 3 points away at Preston, again, taking out the fan side of things and them not being there, but I thought that was a sterling result for Stoke, given the sort of fact they haven't been backed or fancied by any, and it's a hard place to go. So yeah, they're trending up for me this week.
No, fair point. They bossed possession as you'd expect after the 10, but 15 shots, 4 on target. I don't want to make this about Preston, but Preston again, for the second week in a row, have peppered the opposition goal without really threatening.
Well, they've got 1 point from the last 6. So that will be what's remembered for them 2 games, for all the shots they had and stuff at the end of the season. That's 5 points dropped. So for me, as well as praising Preston, I think the fact that Stoke have been on the rack, and I think especially after the Bristol City game as well, when they lost 2-0, I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, they're the sort of club they should be going up against, got beaten on their own patch 2-0. I just think it's a fantastic response. I think 1-0 win solid, keep the clean sheet, and again, Preston are no mugs at any stage, and that's why we saw it last weekend as well. But yeah, 1 point from possible 6 for them in their last 2 games. I think that's a really good result for Stoke City, considering the pressure they were on. Only 1 point going into that game. So, yeah, vital 3 points for them and O'Neill as well.
Rob, on Stoke, should they be doing a lot better? I mean, if you look through their team yesterday, Davis, Chester, Suter, Fox, Smith, John, Obi, McKell, Klukas, McLean, Oakley, Booth, Gregory, Fletcher. That's a squad that should be doing better than beating the 10 men 1-0, shouldn't it? And overall for the season.
Well, I actually think Stoke would be one of my dark horses, if you're honest. I agree that they've been written off. But I think actually O'Neill, when he came in, did a fairly good job last season. I know they finished 18th or something like that. But they were really, bottom of the league, struggling in the relegation zone. Needless to say, when they came down, there's no way they could be going they can't afford to go down again. They've only been to the Premier League 2 years ago, so when he came in, it was just a salvation. Make sure you stay in the league without fail. He did that. I think they've got a platform to build on. You just said they've got some cracking players there. I would tip them as sort of someone I would imagine could sneak into the back door of the playoffs. I think I would say they're on the way up, but it's a slow process. Like I said, when he came in, they were really struggling, and slowly, I think they're getting back to being a force within the league. But they should have done better last season. They should probably be one of the pace setters, really, in the top 5 or 6. But they're not fancied to do so by most, are they? As you rightly said beforehand.
Just one very quick point on Stoke as well. Yesterday on the bench, Nick Powell, Tyrese Campbell, Jack Butland and Danny Bath. And you need a squad in the Championship, but that's 4 players of Championship quality that didn't even get on. So again, although it's just 1-0 at this stage in the season, 3 points is 3 points. And I think that with that on the bench backing them up, although Jack Butland's had his difficulties, there's a lot of quality there over the 46 games to think that they could get results like that and grind them out.
Okay, fair enough. Joe, I've got 3 still here, but it's 2 this week. Joe's 2 trending down. Oh, Brentford and Derby. Kick me off with Brentford and 1-1 draw away at Millwall.
Yeah, I think what we might starting to be seeing from Brentford is a little bit. Well, obviously they had a great year last year and got in the playoffs, but I think we're obviously judging them by their very, very high standards. And I think everyone at the start of this season was looking at Brentford as being the ones, could they make the automatic top 2? And they've had a really inconsistent start. I think the game they won 3-0 against Huddersfield, they looked absolutely brilliant. That was Brentford at their best. The Birmingham game they lost at the start of the season, all over them like a rash, hit the woodwork, should have won the game, but didn't. And that's, taking no points from that game. And to get a 1-1 draw at Millwall, some may say on the surface, not actually too disrespectful, really. It's a decent result, but they had 8 shots on goal and just 1 on target. And that's pretty toothless for a side that should be challenging as they were. We saw the front 3 of Canos, Tonian and Buemo. Ben Rama came on to try and impact things. But I think for Brentford, it's going to be a case of 4 points from a possible 9 from the start. People are expecting a lot more. And I just think to be that inconsistent again at the weekend, I would have wanted to see them that. I watched extended highlights of the Huddersfield game, and in the second half, they were absolutely brilliant. And they should be blowing some teams away. Okay, Millwall are a bit better, but I would have backed Brentford every single day. And I think most of us did in the Predictor League as well. So I think an inconsistent start by them when they would have definitely be hoping for more than 4 points. I think 7 from the first 9 is respectful for Brentford. And that result of the weekend just was a bit flat from them. And they've been a bit hit and miss, draw, win and a loss. It's not really been automatic. But again, we're very, very early on and they could string some results together. But I just think they haven't started as well as most of us would have thought. So they're trending down for me this week with 1 shot on target at Millwall.
Yeah, I think that's probably really the truth of the matter there, isn't it, Rob? That people expected Brentford to come out and be unbeaten, scoring goals, having a laugh, basically a cut above the rest. They're inside the top 10. They've got they're not that bad of a start. 4 points from 3. That's 2 points outside the playoffs. They're still in touching distance of top. It's a marathon, not a sprint. All the old cliches about the Championship. I just think maybe we're a little bit hard on Brentford this year because we expected so much from them. But yesterday, just to put some more meat on that bone, Jed Wallace, 2 weeks after I basically said he wouldn't score your goals in the Championship, Joe, he scored again. So he's certainly been listening to the show. Then and Millwall had the better opportunities, Rob, with Bradshaw going close and who was it? Bradshaw going close and Marlon Romeo going close. Are Brentford struggling? Have they got that hangover that you don't think happens in football?
Actually, I think the dynamic of Brentford is quite different this season because we all those seasons when we were in the playoffs, Brentford were in the playoffs. There's a lot of times they've been up there, and you probably say that they've overachieved on every occasion. I would say, I think most people would probably go with that. They're not one of the top 10, top even 15, maybe biggest clubs in that league, are they? But they've always been competitive, really competitive. Last season probably was their time. But the difference for me this season is that they've only sold one of their top players. Right, they've only sold one of them rather than a couple, which you probably would have thought would happen. And in doing so, they've then replaced him with a £10 million signing. I'm not an expert on Brentford, but I'm going to guess that's probably around their transfer record. In Tony, of course, I mean. Yeah. So for me, they've not weakened themselves. I think when they overachieved last season, or they surprised people, however, this season they've replaced a good player with a good player. For me, they're at the same level. So actually, I think there's an expectation of Brentford this season that it hasn't been there in all of the last 5-6 years when they've been competitive. So maybe people are expecting them to go up rather than thinking, oh, they could do something. People are actually thinking maybe they need to do something. I think the pressure's a bit on them. For the first time in their seasons in the Championship, I think there's pressure on them this season. And they've got a new stadium that obviously they'd love to, have Premier League football flourishing at. I just think that the dynamic for them has gone from the overachieving underdogs to, right, we actually need to do this now. Because we've spent some money. They've invested £10 million. That's a lot of money for them.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money for any club, as we well know. That's more than we'd spend.
Well, yeah, definitely. And for a long time, they've always been, a neck and neck or a little bit smaller than us. So Derby make the list. Is Koku trying to outsprint Lamachi at Forest, Joe, in getting sacked first? Joe, you're on mute. Joe, we've lost you. We've lost your audio.
I'm back. Sorry, guys. I was being on mute because I was having a tug on my vape whilst you were talking.
That's definitely not the best turn of phrase, that, is it?
No, it's really not, is it? I was having a tug.
Take from it what you will, gents. But yeah, no. For Derby County and Koku, that is an absolute car crash of a result. We don't want to say that Blackburn, because they are a fantastic attacking side and they've been brilliant last season at times. I know also they missed Dak, and before that they were scoring lots of goals with him in the side. But to be 3-0 down after 15 minutes at home with a side that you should be level par on playing field with, and at least, and you think with Derby, they've still got the names in the squad. Any team with Wayne Rooney in it at this level, it's got to be expected to do a bit. But I look through the rest of the Derby side. They had that new signing Joswiak in there. Obviously, he still maybe needs time to settle. Knight's a decent midfielder. Andre Wisdom is in there still. And I'm looking through the names on that team, and Marriott up front. It shouldn't be struggling as much as it is. Obviously, Jordan Ibe didn't make the team at the weekend, which could have brought something to it. But I mean, when we're talking about a scoreline losing 4-0, what on earth is one new signing going to bring to it? Derby have got all kinds of problems. And I think I hark back to the first chat that we had and how important fullbacks are in modern football. And to lose Lowe and Bogle to Sheffield United, your two best fullbacks, young English, flying forward, and they're so integral to the game, and they've lost them both, and they've not replaced them with better players. And I think that's where you're going to get done a lot of the time in the Championship, is down the wings. And if you lose your best fullbacks and don't replace them, Koku's got all kinds of problems. I don't think he knows his best team. I don't think he knows how many more signings are coming in. Of course, Jordan Ibe will help, but no, they're in disarray at the moment, and that's a really, really poor result. But taking nothing away from Blackburn, they are a good side, and I think we touched on it on Thursday. I said if Derby turn up, they certainly didn't turn up, judging by the looks of things. And I think that's what played into Blackburn's hands. But to take nothing away from Blackburn, they've got a very strong team at this level, and I think they'll do well this year. But for Derby and Koku, Koku and Lamucci in the early sack race so far in the Championship this season, unless things turn around quickly.
Philip Koku, attitude was not good enough. We conceded a goal. We have a rule in the team, stay in the game. In 4 minutes, we conceded 3 goals, and the game was almost over. Rob, is it almost final curtain call for Philip Koku at Derby, or can he turn it around?
See, I think a little bit different with them. I also looked at their team and I thought to myself, I've never heard of a couple of these guys, because the Derby team, you remember that the Derby team that, I think got to the playoff final. I know we all know Marriott, we all know Waghorn, we all know Lawrence, but there's other cracking players in there. We obviously mentioned Rooney, but it's stuck out to me that they were well under strength. Blackburn, yeah, of course, they had all their big players in there, didn't they? Yeah, with the exception of Dak, as you rightly put. But I think, I was very surprised by that. I think it's one of those. Derby will be absolutely chuffed that their fans weren't in the stadium, because that's a place that turns at 1-0 down, let alone 3-4-0 down. So it would have been ugly. And I don't actually think there's as much pressure on him as maybe there would have been if the fans were there. They would have been, how it goes. We've all been there calling for a manager's head. That does. Don't care what you say, the crowd saying we want Koku out, for example, does add an element of pressure to everything. I think they're a bit under strength, but I think he's the way they're trying to go forward is directly related to Koku. He's obviously got Rooney in as like probably his sort of number 2, if in some ways, even if not officially. I think it's not quite as simple as that with them. They're trying to build something there. They're clearly missing some players, but they've got Rooney in. I think it's a more of a long-term thing with Derby, which maybe is a change of style for them, because as we know, always previously they've spent money trying to get promoted like tomorrow. Maybe they're trying to take things a bit more steadily now and build gradually. I'm not so sure that he'll get the sack half as quick as Lamucci. Okay, I think Forest needs to get promoted before Derby is perhaps what I'm trying to say.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
that's fair. I think definitely. I think in terms of Forest and the money that's sort of been played, because obviously I think Joswiak is only the only signing that Derby have bought in for any kind of money this year, and that was only the other week for 4 or 5 million. So I think that they won't be anywhere near. I think the owner come on record last year saying there was virtually no money in the club. So yeah, they are looking from within. But that Louis Sibley, he played yesterday and he scored a hat-trick from last season, England under-21 international, and it's just they've got some quality, although it's not the names of yesteryear, but I still think they'd have enough to at least be getting mid-table, or at least pushing up a little bit higher with that team. But the weakest area of it is the back four, and that was obviously showing at the weekend, conceding 4 and 3 of them in this inside quarter of an hour. It's virtually over at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, sitting with a -7 already. So Rob, you're 2 up. We've got Blackburn first of all. We'll start with those as we're talking about that game there. Why? Well, it's quite obvious why Blackburn are there, but talk to us about Blackburn.
Yeah, well, I think the Championship is a very competitive league. If you go anywhere and win 3-0, 4-0, I mean that's an outstanding result, isn't it? Because there's very few weak teams. I mean, this season there is a couple of weak teams. So if they went to perhaps a Wickham and won 3-0, we wouldn't really think so much of an eye. But most of the Championship, if you go there and win convincingly away, I mean that's a tough thing to do. Really tough thing to do. I think Blackburn have, like you said, Joe said earlier, they've been brilliant at times in the last couple of years. And they sort of, I've put them up a bit because I think maybe that kind of victory shows they've got intentions of doing bigger things this season. As we said, they're without Dak, who's probably in the top 10 players in the league, I would go as far as to say.
Wow.
Yeah, I just think that maybe they can make something happen this season. I think they're probably annoyed that they haven't already got to that point, to be quite honest. I think, the last couple of seasons, there was definitely opportunities for them to, get in and around the playoffs for sure, and they haven't done it. But that's quite a statement win, that, isn't it? Because Derby are one of those teams you'd expect to be challenging around the playoffs most seasons, and to go and win at one of those teams 4-0, I think you've got to be on the up. They always look like they've got a few goals in them, Blackburn as well. If they're winning 4-0 away, looking promising without their best player,
it's only good things, yeah. And Mowbray said after the game, we just keep doing what we do. We should have got more from Bournemouth in the first game. Scored 5 last week and have done pretty well today. The players deserve huge credit for their work rate. Now, he is right. They were very unlucky in the opening day, Joe, against Bournemouth. They lost 3-2. Armstrong's already on 11 goals this season. Can they keep Armstrong with an extended window the way he's playing?
Yeah, well, I think because he's threatened before many a time. I think he's not just started scoring goals now. I think there was a season where he was at Blackburn. It might have been one of his loan spells before his permanent move from Newcastle, where he was in the 20s and stuff. So I think he's probably not really too much of a well-kept secret. I think people know what he can do at this level. But for Blackburn, quite luckily, he flies under the radar a little bit. And to me, I'm just looking. I don't know if. I think Armstrong's proven himself at this level and has done consistently for the last few years. He's a good option. I'm just wondering, is he at that level where a low to medium Premier League club would take a gamble just yet? And just looking at those sides, I mean, he's a very Southampton signing, but I don't know if they, need that sort of option. So it may be a case with money and clubs at the moment in the Premier League, they'd probably have to part with 10, 15 million quid for him. So it might be a case of, just leave him to see if he's the top scorer come January, then I think there'll be a lot more options open to him. But he kind of strikes me as a player that great for Blackburn fans, but it just slightly flies under the radar. And maybe not many teams want to take a punt necessarily in that big gap above in the Premier League. But I think he's definitely had the pedigree for it. He's had an England youth career and was at Newcastle, wasn't he? So I think if he's near the top in January, more clubs will be interested. But I think Blackburn will be safe this window with him.
First of all,
I was just going to add, I think actually he's quite similar to Jared Bowen in that way. If you remember, sort of Bowen was always scoring a few goals for Hull. I think he's also, both of them can also play on the left of midfield, left of a front three, in a sort of Sears kind of role. I think sort of both of them sort of built up to a point where they was top scorer in the league, scoring a lot of goals, and then the move came for Bowen. I think if Blackburn can hang on to him for the whole season, they've got a good chance of doing something. But I do think if he's still banging the goals, comes to January, perhaps he's got 20, which at the moment doesn't look particularly unlikely, does it? I mean, we're sitting here in not even October, and he's already getting there. So I think they will have some interest in him definitely when the time comes, and I do think he could end up going sort of similar way to Bowen. Southampton's a good shout. West Ham, one of those sort of 12th to 15th place clubs in the Premier League.
Yeah, fair play. Bradley Johnson, the king of the long range effort, grabbing another one yesterday. Don't think I've ever seen Bradley Johnson score a scruffy goal. But Rob, very quickly, just talk to me on Tony Mowbray, because this is a man that wasn't particularly well received when he became manager of Blackburn, but he's guided them through the league, but back to the Championship, and now he's got them playing some absolutely fantastic stuff.
No, I think, as Ashley Bell said, I'm chuffed for him. It's good to see that it's worked out. But not only that, I mean, shows what sticking with a manager can do, doesn't it? Have they got in the playoffs? Have they challenged? Have they really gone for it? No. But have they fired him and got someone else in to do the job? No. So I think they've stuck with him, and fair play to them for doing that. And actually, Blackburn, probably after all the whole Vinky's mess, probably looking like one of the most better run clubs in the league. Dare I say it?
Yeah. What a shock! What a shock that is.
Yeah, I mean, who would have seen that coming not so long ago? Chickens were running around the pitch. So, I think I'm chuffed for him. To be fair, it's worked out well, and they're a strong team. You wouldn't fancy yourself going there. You wouldn't if you had to go there and win to get in the playoffs, as we once did. Well, as we know, we didn't. We didn't win. We got a helping hand. I wouldn't fancy going there needing to win.
Nope, fair enough. Right, another team on your list is another team that hasn't been getting much respect. I've got to be honest. There are semi-finalists in the playoffs last year, and a lot of people have just seemed to dismiss them and count them out. So Swansea, Rob, a 2-0 win away at Wycombe yesterday. Talk to me about why they're on your 2 trending up.
I just think they're sort of continuing a bit where they went last season. They're sort of on a slow upward trend. I mean, if you'd asked me if you think they're going to win at Wycombe, I would have said yes. So I'm not really surprised, if you know what I mean. But I just think that they're just ticking over nicely. I mean, I would have had in my top 2. Clearly, I would have had Reading, if I'm honest. But Swansea were the next one for me. I think they're just consistent. I can see them staying where they are. Sort of, I can see them being fairly consistent. I don't see them going on a run of losing 6 games or something. I think they're strong, and they snuck in the playoffs a bit by the back door last season, but. Yeah, I think they've just picked up the sort of momentum. I know they didn't get to the final or anything, but I think they've picked up the momentum of the run of last season and they just carried it on. I think I fancied them to be in the top 6 again, Swansea. They're not maybe as fashionable as they once were. Everyone was obviously waxing lyrical about the style of football they played when they got promoted. I think it was under, was it Rodgers or was it under Martinez? One of the two a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I just think they're sort of quietly going about their business. Really, I mean that's a routine away win in the Championship, isn't it? Unfortunately for Wycombe.
It really is.
I just think they're doing their business.
Yeah, and I had to sort of push you to choose the second one because the second one I had already. So let's go to your 2 down now. Wycombe kick us off, and then we've got Forest. Talk to me on Wycombe.
Well, I think you could see it coming, couldn't you? Do you know what I mean? I was just looking at the table just before we come on, and Sheffield Wednesday have got a game in hand on them. But if they win that game in hand, they're only 5 points behind Wycombe.
Don't you? Oh, where's Joe gone? Don't you start with the Wycombe Sheffield Wednesday love. Joe's already waxed in.
I really do think that if you look at Sheffield Wednesday, if they win today, I mean they're only 6 points off 19th.
Here he is. Look. The Wednesday loving started already, Joe. Here it is. Look,
I just think they've got enough to stay up. They've got enough to stay up and finish 15th, 16th. I really do think that, and the start of the season has led me to not change my mind at all.
Will Wycombe get a single win this season?
Yes, of course they will. But they could really do with the crowd in there. I mean, they could really do with the crowd in there at home to anyone. But if they had the crowd in there at home to, I don't know, someone who's on a bad run of form, maybe a QPR lost 3 and 4 or something like that. That's the kind of game they're going to stay. If they stay up, it will be the wins at home. But they haven't got any crowd. It's not doing them any favours. I just think they're going to struggle in the same way that Yeovil did, in the same way that perhaps Burton probably did in the season they went down. Although they made a good account of themselves for a couple of years previous. I just think they're overachieving to get there. If they stay up, absolutely fair play to them. But I think they're really going to struggle. I'm not surprised by their start of the season, unfortunately.
Okay. And a team that's seeing the down list too often this year so far is Forest. They've made your list. They've made my list. I think Joe's had them on his trending down list. We've already covered a little bit of Forest, but talk to me about why you particularly are down on them this week and how they can turn it around.
Well, same thing a bit with Derby in some ways. I think they're the only 2 clubs in the whole 92 glad that their fans aren't in, aren't they? Both of those clubs their fans would be going nuts. So,
and rightly so.
Yeah, probably rightly so. I just think that something has to change. For sure, they won't struggle. I don't think them or Derby will finish in probably the bottom 8 or 10. So I think they'll both turn it round. But I think, like we said earlier on, I do think that Forest, if it doesn't come quickly, there'll be someone else in there to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think as soon as 2 weeks' time, Joe, for Forest. I really, he's got to turn it around, and he's got to turn it around quickly.
I saw someone talking about Brian Clough, Nigel Clough in the chat.
Yes, that's right. Ben Moore here was Nigel Clough could come in at Forest, and it would be sensible. Forest's next 2 games, if we have a quick look at Forest,
they're not good.
No, they're not, are they?
I think they got.
Here we go. We've got Bristol City at home and Blackburn away.
That was it, yeah. The Blackburn away, I don't fancy for them. That could be really, really tough. It's looking hard for them to get their sort of season up and running, really. Now you're looking at those games and thinking it might actually have to be the next one, because the form that Blackburn are in currently, it's a bit ominous for a side at Nottingham Forest is really struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick Muller says we should buy you a Sheffield Wednesday mug for Christmas. I think he's right, Joe. I think we should.
Yeah, you'd be welcome. I mean, like I say, I took so much flack, and just for a little stat, if Sheffield Wednesday win today, they are 5 points behind Nottingham Forest after 3 games.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's what I was. I mean, I could easily see them getting out of it.
I'm glad someone agrees. Like I say, Gary Monk, they've got enough quality, more than enough.
Right, my 2 up. I've got Watford. Winning a derby is, it's never easy. Form goes out the window. I think playing a derby at home wouldn't have helped, because you don't have the crowd, you don't have the lift. But João Pedro, fantastic player, Pedro. He's hit the ground running at Watford. I love him. I think he creates, he scores, he's a great player. And they just took Watford to task yesterday a little bit for me. Luton took Luton to task for me. Luton had majority of possession, just shading it. But Watford, 14 shots to Luton's 4, 5 on target, 0 against. They've done everything you need them to do in a derby game, and the quality come through. And really, Luton, they should be disappointed because they didn't really offer a lot. Anybody got anything to say about Watford?
Yeah, I'll go. Well, I was going to say my first comment on that was, I think actually, to be fair, the fact you've got Watford in here for beating Luton actually shows how far Luton have come, because just stayed up. I mean, you'd think they're probably one of the smallest clubs, but there they are in the top 6, and to beat them, you've got to be pretty good. I mean, they rolled over Norwich in the cup, didn't they? I think the compliment to Luton in a sort of in its own way. I do think Watford are only doing what we thought they were going to. I mean, they had good players. It was only mismanagement really that got them into this situation in the first place. I mean, they are also the specialists. I think they're I'm a specialist in changing managers, I was going to say, but I think they probably realised that they made a mistake last season in firing Pearson when they did. I don't know if they would have stayed up, but it certainly would have increased the chance. I think that you'll see them calm down a bit because they can't afford to just keep chopping and changing. And if they need to get someone in there that's going to stick there and make it work. And I do think that they'll give this manager a proper chance, and he's probably got a lot more flexibility in terms of results than perhaps others have. I think they've had their fingers burnt by themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right about Luton. And last week I was waxing lyrical about them, if Joe remembers, and I was really high on them. They were part of my 3 trending up teams. And I think this defeat for Luton is their first in 7, including back end of last season. So it is putting respect on Luton's name, Joe. But Watford yesterday did everything they had to do, didn't they?
Yeah, too strong. And I think there's no shame in it. I think if I was coming away as Luton manager, I think first half an hour after the full-time whistle, I'd be a bit frustrated, because you're always a bit like, what could have been? I think you look back and I think you think the players have put in a really good account of themselves. I think Watford, maybe pound for pound, have arguably the strongest squad in the Championship. And you touched on that, João Pedro as well. I think, it's a hefty fee he arrived for in the previous summer. And I think he, as an 17-year-old that doesn't speak English, to come over, he's probably had a tough year in the Premier League last year where he barely played. And I think he played a bit in the under-23s, and he may have even gone back to Brazil briefly. And it was clear that they were buying him for the future. And in a strange way, I think for João Pedro's development, and both Watford's as well, the former Fluminense striker, he was one of those prodigies in Brazil that was scoring goals for fun at like 17, as we hear him over the Neymar and all that kind of, they always score goals young and get a move to Europe. I think it's kind of been a bit of a perfect storm for Watford and him, because he's like 18, 19 now, and he can come play in the Championship. He's clearly got all the ability in the world, and it could be, as you touched on, a really good season for João Pedro and Watford. And then who knows, going to the Premier League next year and he's worth a hell of a lot of money. He either stays at the club if they've got momentum and going up, or Watford get a massive fee for him. So yeah, no, it all works out quite nicely. But yeah, no shame for Luton that after their start to the season. It's been superb. So to lose 1-0 narrowly at Watford, I don't think they can have too many complaints.
No, absolutely. Second team on my list is Reading. Top of the table, Reading. Am I living in some sort of weird nightmare? Reading are top of the table. They're unbeaten. They're scoring goals. And actually, they look a really well-drilled, well-organised side. And yesterday, it was your traditional smash and grab, if you like. They didn't have possession. They had less shots than the home team, but they had 5 shots on target and scored 2. And they were drilled. And the manager himself said, the win reflects the spirit. The identity is still forging, but we have a game plan and we stick to it. And they were really good for their money yesterday. They won the game. They frustrated Cardiff, who, by the way, they've got Kiefer Moore, but they brought him to score goals. And yesterday he was running channels and providing crosses and doing the work you don't want him to do. The money you've not paid is for him to do that. But this is about Reading, and I was really impressed yesterday. And I wouldn't say they're a top 6 candidate because I think they'll fall away. But hey, who knows? You keep this going for 4, 5, 6 more weeks, and you're in the mix.
Yeah, and I don't, also from Reading's point of view as well, I think as we've seen historically in the Championship, there's always a team that isn't fancied on paper to break into the top 6 and sometimes does. Well, i.e. Nottingham Forest have a poor year, there's a space up for grabs. You know, there's always one team that's tipped and one team that isn't. But I touch on that Ajaria they signed from Liverpool. He's been there on loan previously and they got him on a permanent this time. And with Mate, I think they've got some really nice options at this level. I think Omar Richards at left back is a really competent left back at this level, a young English left back. Again, I think Reading are in a really nice place. And I think what they'll probably want is, again, to keep flying under the radar. It'll be harder if they're top 2 all the time, but to fly under the radar and just go about their business in a really nice, quiet way. And that will suit Reading down to the ground this year and see if they can mount something when other teams are struggling. Yeah,
absolutely. Right, on to my down. We've got Barnsley and Coventry. We will kick it up, but they're both in the same game, so we can discuss this and then move on to the Predictor League. I think this overall 0-0 yesterday was an absolute woeful result for both clubs. Both clubs will be fighting relegation. Simple as that. They know that. This was your first 6-pointer, not your first 6-pointer in Coventry's, but your 6-pointer. You must take points off these teams that will be around you. Otherwise, you're never going to really survive. And it just was a, 52% possession to Coventry. There was 23 shots in the game overall, only 2 shots on target overall. It just was a typical bottom 6 Championship sides going at it, neither really having quality to break each other down. And I just think if you're going to survive, you must win this game. One of you.
Yeah, I'll go. I do agree to a point, but I think Coventry have had an okay start, and actually Barnsley had a great finish to last season and started okay this season, I think. I do kind of agree that if you're Barnsley, that you are going to be struggling. For me, that's a good point for Coventry because they didn't lose and it's a clean sheet. But for me, I do take your point. I think I expected Barnsley to win that. I think I put it in my predictor. I think Barnsley are in decent shape. They've got a manager that's he's got things working for him. He's obviously, so I've heard,
their squad's not good enough.
Their squad's probably not good enough, but their squad probably wasn't good enough to set up last season either. But he still pulled it off, didn't he? I just think they're, yeah, well, maybe, but he got them from much like Luton. They came from nowhere to even be in the running. I just think their head coach has obviously had, so I've heard, sort of interest from other places, maybe the MLS. He's sort of, his stock is certainly quite high at the moment. I think he's sort of overachieving with them just to still be in the league. Did they not knock out Nottingham Forest in the cup the other week? I think it was one of Forest's great at the moment. It's not. But by the same extent, I think they beat Nottingham Forest right at the end of last season as well, to keep themselves up. So they're doing okay. But I just think for Coventry that's a good point actually. I think any point away from home when you've come up and you expect to struggle, any point away from home is good, especially with the clean sheet. Whereas Barnsley, I think they'd be disappointed not to win that. That's a home game they've earmarked for 3 points, definitely.
Joe?
But I do think that Barnsley are not, they're not doing too badly, actually.
Anything to note on the two teams before we move on to the Predictor League?
No, that was a stinky result. But I don't think it was as bad for Coventry as it was for Barnsley, considering the start. I think if someone said to Coventry, your first 3 games in the Championship, you'd have a win, a draw, and a loss, I think they'd have taken it, to be quite honest. So I don't think it was an appalling result, although they might look at Barnsley at the end of the season, Coventry, and think, maybe we could have got a result there. But I don't think you can even say that really when you have no shots on target. So I think for them, in the grand scheme of things, a point isn't actually that bad because they've got that first win under their belt. But yeah, a poorer result for Barnsley.
I don't know. Oh, hello.
Who let the dogs out, mate?
Who let the dogs out? Right. So answer Joe's question while I load up the Predictor League there, Joe. How's things, Joe?
How's things? Oh, Daniel, hello, mate. How's things? Yeah, they're good, mate. Should they not be? Why is that? Oh, what? Because of the Predictor League, or what? Yeah, no, things are good. I'm a bit nervous as to why now. Colchester got a point yesterday at Mighty Barrow. Everything's cushy, Daniel, mate. I couldn't be more happy. Or is it because we're about to hit the scores this week and I had a stinker? Yeah, I'm not even on there. That's how bad I was. Look at that.
Are you not? Yes, you are. There you go.
Creeping at the bottom.
There you are. So this week's Predictor League, we've got Ben and S, 12 points apiece, leading the way. Dan on 10, Nick on 8, Cruncher on 8, Robbie on 8, Martin on 6, Joe on 6. Joe, you sent me some stuff after I'd done this, and I didn't make head nor tail of it, so I didn't include it. We have to talk off air because I just didn't get what you were saying.
Yeah, no, that was from basically it was from the previous week. It was the Bristol City additional results from the Stoke game on week 2. So that's what would have been added on additionally. But I'll happily do that, and we can square out the points on Thursday in the first 5 or 10 when we come on and show who's won the week. But so far, that's S and Ben have got a week each there, so that's 1 for them. So that's a week in the book. For S and Ben, and I believe last week was Nick. I think he got 18, so he's got a week as well. And in the first week, it was me, you, and Cruncher on 8 points, and Daniel on 2. So I think that maybe me, you, and Cruncher can have a week, or maybe just give it to Cruncher, and me and you can start fresh to be charitable towards the rest of the podcast. But we'll chat off there, and on Thursday we'll announce it. But it looks like S and Ben have got a week under their belts, and we'll add the points onto the totals as well.
Yeah, I tell you what though, Joe. There's obviously, as Nick rightly puts that, there's still 2 games to go, and we will add those points. Those will count for next week, right? Yeah.
So what we're going to do now from going onwards, and it will all be explained clearer on Thursday as well. But Sunday mornings are for the Saturdays and Friday results, and you'll get the result there. And then on Thursday, the Sunday game, if it's whether it's 1 or 2, this week it happens to be 2. On Thursday, we'll announce who did what in the Sunday game, and you'll go into the weekend for the Friday and Saturday with a head start. So it kind of counts. So you get the previous Sunday onto next week. So on Thursday, we'll go, Sunday's games were in. There was 4 points for Dan, 2 for Nick. You'll carry them on into the weekend, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a head start. So we kind of carry on the Predictor League sort of throughout the week. But yeah, we'll go over week 2. But having a look through the winners, I'm pretty sure Nick was the winner of week 2 with 18 points in total because he got Bristol City 2-1 against Stoke and got an additional 2 points to his 16. So I'm pretty sure Nick won week 2, S and Ben have won week 3, and me, you, and Cruncher won week 1. But that's a little hyphen next to that little default because we'll discuss what if we're going to do it because it was only the 4 of us to kick it off. Now we've got so many of you, so it's great stuff. But yes,
and we want more.
We carried on to Thursday.
Yeah. Yes, we want more of you. So join in every single week. Anybody this week particularly nail it at all?
Yeah, actually, mate, let me just pull up the... to be quite honest, the popular one which got a lot of people 4 points was QPR and Borough. It was 1-1 that game, and I think quite a few of you got 4 points for that. So, yes, Ben, 4 points for that particular one. No, actually, hold on. Sorry, I'm looking at Reading. Ben, you got 4 points for the Reading one. You got the Reading one on the nose. Daniel got 4 points for the QPR one. Nick got 4 points for the QPR one, and Cruncher got 4 points for the QPR one. You all went 1-1 QPR Borough. I think that was a very good call there, you guys. And yes, Robbie also got 4 points for the Swansea results, saying they'd beat Wickham 2-0. So a few on the nose there, lads. Good job.
Well done. And just for those that are listening that are new or need a reminder, Nick Muller helpfully asks, how do the points work again?
So yes, so basically, if Swansea, you get 2 points for a correct result, win, lose, or draw. So if you said Swansea to win 2-1 at the weekend, you got 2 points because they won 2-0. And if you get the score on the nose correct, it's 4 points. That's all. 2 points or 4 points or 0 points, of course, if you get it wrong. And then obviously we add up your points and what you got this week. So yeah,
and we
Nick,
have
got
had
this week.
And we have had somebody with 0 points, haven't we? Sadly,
Tim, not this week.
Last week, Tim 0 points.
Yeah, I think he only gave us about 2 or 3 results. In fairness, though, to Tim, so there was 1 or 2 missing, well, quite a few missing from Tim's. So yeah,
yeah. So with 8 points up for grabs, Nick Cruncher. Well, anybody really can still take it off S and Ben, can't they?
Well, I'll tell you what. Do you a quick little run through? I mean, obviously, not for today because obviously the results are frozen. This week's done. We'll be carrying on Sundays into next week, won't we? When we come on Thursday. But yeah, to give guys a quick idea, if you forgot, Rob has gone for 3-1 Bristol City today and 2-1 to Bournemouth. S has gone 3-1 Bristol City and 2-1 to Norwich. Daniel has gone 2-0 Bristol City today. That's all right. He'll be more town loving in a sec. And he's gone 5-0 Bournemouth, Daniel, because he was taking magic mushrooms at the time of predicting it. And Ben has gone 3-0 Bristol City and 4-0 Bournemouth Norwich.
Yes, Ben.
But maybe perhaps more milder magic mushrooms for Ben. And and Martin has gone 2-1 Bristol City, 0-0 Bournemouth Norwich. Nick has gone 3-1 Bristol City, 4-1 to Bournemouth, Nick, in that game as well. Here we go. This is the one that's going to hurt the most, though. Cruncher has gone 2-1 Bristol City today, and he's gone for Bournemouth 1, Norwich 3. That's from the Cruncher.
I was being pretty mild there with a 0-0. Come over me. What come over me? Jeez.
I love it.
Jeez.
Great. Being mild doesn't suit you being mild, mate.
No, it really doesn't, does it? It really doesn't.
Not a personality trait.
No, definitely not. No, my detractors and haters will certainly not be saying that about me in my my weekly haters column. So anyway, we're done. We're dusted. Another week in the books. Lovely for you to join us there, Drizzle. It's been good to have you.
Well, actually, Martin, sorry, really quickly. I'm really sorry to interrupt. We'll only wrap it up, but Twitter is reporting it. No real credible sources apart from a local journo, but apparently Leeds have put in a 15 to 20 million pound bid for Todd Cantwell this morning. He's set to be left out of the squad today. Whether or not he actually will be, Farker doesn't tend to do that with players if they've got interest in them, as he's done with Aaron's, etc. So I don't know if he will be left out, but this might be one to pick up on Thursday should anything happen in the coming days.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think he'd be a big loss either, to be honest.
Well, I think he might be a bit more now with Kieran Dow, and I think Todd Cantwell was arguably Norwich's best player in the Premier League last year. He was, assisted quite a few and scored some goals.
Shocking TikTok videos, though.
Yeah, then of course that makes him a really bad football player.
No, but just
makes him an unlikable football player. That's what it makes him.
What kind of argument is that? Well, Todd Cantwell, his TikTok videos weren't really up to scratch for me. We find out Norwich result during
We're done. I'm not having this conversation again about Norwich. Every time. You're not going to get any. I'm not bitter.
You are. You'd be desperate to be in their position with all their money rather than languishing in League One with 100 million over your head.
Well, of course you would. No, but honestly, I don't.
I'm joking.
I don't think Norwich. No, I know. I'm going to be serious for a second. I don't think out of the players you could lose, Norwich. This is. I think Todd Cantwell is the one you probably could lose the most.
I don't know, maybe Ben Godfrey now they've got Ben Gibson in, possibly. It's a tough one, really. But yeah, as you know, they are good or stronger in the midfield area. But I think with Kieran Dow now being out until 2020, that might be a bit more of a problem because he's quite similar to Cantwell. So yeah, some problems there early on.
Has Cantwell been playing, guys? I'm sure I was checking out their lineup last week. I think it was the Preston game. I'm not sure if he's in there. I don't know if he's even fit, to be honest, is he?
He wasn't. No, he wasn't in there.
I think he's played in the cup and he's come off the bench. That's about it. He's been training every week and stuff and that, but he did have, I think, a little hammy going into the season. But I think he's come off the bench. I know, it's a shame. But, yeah, not needed him so far. But I have a funny feeling he'll probably go. He looks like a Premier League player to me. He's very, very silky and links up the play very nicely. There's a lot of teams actually, in the fan section on Twitter going, I'd like Cantwell, so-and-so. I mean, even some of the Liverpool fans were asking for, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, Southend, the only team in Essex. That's true, Nick. They're bottom of League Two after 3 straight defeats, and we're in the playoffs with 7, mate. 1 team in Essex. I look forward to them to being in the National North next year, mate. 1 team in
done.
Essex. God.
Just remember the Southend get battered everywhere they go, boys.
Yeah, Southend get battered. 7-1 at home.